All right, what is up, Mission Church? Great to see you all this weekend. Those of you on the lobby, out in the patio, those of you joining us online, welcome to Mission. So glad you're here. My name is Breaux, by the way, and I've been involved in Mission since the very beginning, and they still let me show up and teach every now and then. And if you're new to Mission, I can't tell you how grateful we are that you would come here today. This is one exciting weekend for all of us, and what we celebrate today is the turning point in all of human history. And I've been praying it might be a turning point for you today as well. You see, if the resurrection is true, anything is possible. There are 4 books in the Bible all about Jesus. They're called the Gospels, which literally just means the good news. And they were inspired by God's Spirit, and they're written by guys named Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And when Mark wrote his gospel, he sat down with one of Jesus' closest followers, one of his mentors, an eyewitness to everything that Jesus has said and done along the way, this guy named Peter. And Mark writes down what Peter shares with him. So let me just read Mark's Easter account from Mark chapter 16. Very early on Sunday morning, just at sunrise, several women that were followers of Jesus, went to the tomb. On the way, they were asking each other, "Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance to the tomb?" But as they arrived, they looked up and saw that the stone, which was very large, had already been rolled aside. When they entered the tomb, they saw a young man clothed in a white robe sitting on the right side. The women were shocked, but the angel said, "Don't be alarmed. You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He isn't here. He is risen from the dead. Look, this is where they laid his body. Now go and tell his disciples, including Peter, that Jesus is going ahead of you to Galilee. You will see him there just as he told you before he died." So Mark records via Peter that the angel said to the women, make sure Peter knows. If there's anybody who needs to know this good news, it's that guy. Make sure that Peter knows. Now, hold on to that. It'll make sense to you in just a few minutes. I brought my backpack, by the way. This is one. Well, it's pretty heavy, actually. This is one of those things I carry around with me all the time. I keep it in the bed of my truck. This is I've just collected things through the years. It's kind of my backpack of failures and screw-ups. And let me just show you a few things that are in here. See if I haven't looked in it in a little while. This is crazy. This was like a long time ago. This is a spelling test from the 2nd grade that I've kept for years and years. Let's see what else. Oh my goodness, this is embarrassing. I'll never forget this. This was my Little League glove. 11 years old, I was playing shortstop, and the score, we were up by 1, bottom of the last inning, the bases were loaded, ball gets hit to me, goes right between my legs. They score 2 runs, they win the game over. So I've held on to this all these years to remind me of what a screw-up I am. Let's see what else I got. Oh, unpaid parking ticket. Let's see. Some guys, if you get a hole-in-one, you save your golf ball, This was a quadruple bogey that I kept. This is embarrassing. This is the very first sermon I ever turned in seminary. This was last week's. This is ridiculous, right? Right? Now, can we just do a little survey real quick? Now, I don't want you to raise your hand until the end, and don't elbow somebody as we're doing this. Wait till I'm completely done and ask for a show of hands. If you have ever flunked a class, bombed a test, if you've ever been cut from a team, ever really messed up an audition, you got rejected for a date, you crashed your diet, you got fired from a job, you got pulled over and given a ticket, you've been arrested and sent to jail, if your business tanked, if you ever lost your cool with a 3-year-old, if you've ever experienced a moral, social, athletic, academic, relational, financial, marital, or vocational failure of any kind, just go ahead and raise your hand right now. Wow, you're a bunch of losers. Wow. Here's the deal. No matter how good any of us look, every one of us is in the same boat. All of us have wrestled to some degree with failure. We all got some junk in our past. And the reality is, some of us really do carry this junk around with us all through life. So I'm here to tell you today that the good news of Easter is that there is a perfect God who gives hope to imperfect failures like you and me. And the hope that he gives is not a wishful thinking, I hope so kind of hope. It is a rock solid, fresh start, clean slate, second chance, rise up from the ashes kind of hope. And there is hope for everyone. As you might imagine, the Bible is full of hope, and the Bible is full of big-time failures who needed hope. And one of those guys was this dude named Peter. His name was actually Simon. Jesus gave him the nickname Peter, or the name Petros, which means the rock, or like Rocky. Before there was Dwayne Johnson or Sylvester Stallone, there was Petros. He was a professional fisherman, and everything we know about this guy suggests he was big, broad-shouldered, calloused hands, outdoor face, rugged and ripped kind of guy. Peter was the rock. He was strong, he was committed, he was loyal, he was faithful, he was tough, he was courageous. At least he thought he was. Some of y'all know the story where Jesus and the guys had just finished their last meal together in this borrowed upper room. And then, minus Judas, they all go out to the east side of Jerusalem to this ridge called the Mount of Olives. And it's there that Jesus says to the remaining 11 disciples, this very night, all of you will fall away on account of what's going to happen to me. And Peter, in his prideful self-confidence, he thumps his chest and says, not a chance. Even if all of these guys fall away, I won't run. I won't bail on you. These other guys might because they're weak, but I'm the rock, man. You gave me that name yourself. And Jesus says, oh, really? Here's the truth, Peter. This very night before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. You're going to have a chance to stand up for me. And you will lie about even knowing me. And Peter gets super defensive and says, there's no way. There's just no way. Even if I have to die with you, I would never disown you. Yeah, I think the toughest failures to get over are the ones that we pridefully declare would never happen to us. That's why this verse is such a good reminder to me. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 12 says, don't be so naive and self-confident. You're not exempt. You could fall flat on your face as easily as anybody else. If in our prideful cockiness, we think we are so strong that we could never fall, then we are actually in more danger of falling than those who believe that it's actually possible. That's what makes the Titanic one of the most famous failures in history. The visionaries, the creators, the engineers of this incredible luxury liner were certain that this was one ship that would never sink. 26,000-ton hull was believed to be indestructible. As it left port for its fateful voyage, a passenger, Mrs. Albert Caldwell, asked a deckhand, is this ship really unsinkable? The crew member shot back, lady, God himself couldn't sink this ship. So no one could have imagined the nightmare when on its maiden voyage, this unsinkable ship plunged to the bottom of the North Atlantic at 2:20 a.m. on April 15th, 1912, taking over 1,500 passengers and crew to their death. The most staggering failures in life are the ones we thought would never happen to the unsinkable us. And when they do, man, you're left to wonder if he'll ever resurface again. And that's how we find Peter after the crucifixion of Jesus. Over in John chapter 21, we find him on a boat. It's not a luxury liner on the North Atlantic, just a small fishing boat on the sea called Galilee. And this boat, the boat itself is very stable. He's the one that's sinking. I mean, he drowned in a sea of shame and regret, probably replaying that night over and over in his mind, asking himself, how in the world could I have done that? Some of you know the story, how Peter makes that boast about being unsinkable in his devotion to Jesus. I got your back, man. I would never disown you. I would die for you. And on the night that Jesus is arrested and led away to stand trial before the high priest Caiaphas, Peter follows at a distance. He sits down in the courtyard by this charcoal fire to warm himself. He's there in a crowd of people, but he's trying to lay low. Probably has his hood pulled up a little bit, And somebody says, hey, I know you. You're one of his followers. And Peter goes, what? I don't know what you're talking about. I've never seen that guy in my life. And another guy chimes in and says, yeah, you're You're definitely one of his disciples. I saw you the other day in a marketplace with him. Yeah, you're one of his. And he goes, I told you, I don't know this guy. I've never seen him before in my life. I don't know him. A third person chimes in and says, your accent gives you away. You can tell you're from Galilee. You're definitely one of his disciples. And Peter begins to curse and swear. And he says, I don't know the man. And a rooster crows. Luke 22 is kind of a poignant verse where it says, at that moment, the Lord turned and looked at Peter. Can you imagine what that scene must have been like? Peter runs away, collapses in a pile of shame, and just cries his heart out. The once proud, indestructible Peter is a failure. No longer bold, no longer committed, courageous, not even remotely close to being an I will die for you kind of friend. So I'm guessing now as he floats in that little fishing boat, every time he closes his eyes, he sees that moment, standing around that charcoal fire, looking through the smoke, locking eyes with his best friend Jesus. And he feels so worthless, feels forever trashed, cannot get it out of his mind. As he floats there on the water of regret, man, he's sinking to the bottom. Anybody else relate to this? Like every one of us has floated in a boat called failure, regret, shame. Some of you might even be riding in it right now. You feel sunk, you feel deflated, ashamed, embarrassed, and you wonder if you will ever resurface again. In fact, you walked in here today carrying this thing. And you walked in here thinking, man, I've ruined everything. I have broken so many promises. I've gambled away our savings. My addictions have cost me my career. My anger has cost me my relationship with my brother. My kids may never speak to me again. My folks will never trust me now. Now, I've really broken God's heart. How could I, a person like me, ever resurface from my failures and find renewed hope and purpose? Is there a way for me to rise above my embarrassment and my regret and my guilt and my sin and my shame? Well, the answer is yes. The good news of Easter, the good news of Jesus Christ is that he came, he died, and he rose again so that all of us could not only start over, we could actually become new. Looking at the experience of Peter, I think there are at least three things he does right. And they're the same things that are true for anybody who needs to resurface in their life. The first one is this: he owned his stuff. Peter owned his stuff. There's no denial, no faking it, no stuffing it, no pretending. He owned it. He admitted it. And he was broken by what he had done. Look at what it says in Matthew 26, verse 75. Then Peter remembered the word Jesus had spoken. Before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. And he went outside and wept bitterly. There's a couple of things in there. It says he remembered the word that Jesus had spoken. So Peter says to himself, you know what? Jesus was right. What he said was right. I was wrong. I said I'd never fall. He said I would. He was right. I was wrong. I hope you've discovered by now the amazing freedom in those 3 little words. I was wrong. Proverbs 28 verse 13 says, a man or a woman who refuses to admit their mistakes can never be successful. But if they confess and forsake them, they get another chance. Peter owned his stuff. He admitted his failure and was broken by it. And the once proud rock was reduced to a pile of rubble, and he goes out and weeps bitterly. Now, I know this sounds counterintuitive, but gang, brokenness is the pathway to wholeness. The first words out of Jesus' mouth when he gave that famous Sermon on the Mount that we've been studying for the past, 6 or 7 weeks now, was blessed are the broken. Blessed are the poor in spirit, the spiritually busted. Happy are those who recognize their spiritual poverty and acknowledge that they have a desperate need for God. You see, God fixes broken things. And God uses broken things. And Peter's brokenness here was what started his pathway to wholeness. Now, just a brief caveat here. I've learned there's a big difference between being broken and being miserable. Now, if you're in recovery, you're in AA, NA, or whatever, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I was talking to a really sweet lady after a church service one time who began to tell me about her 23-year-old son who was using and abusing drugs. And she told me about his journey and how he comes home and he cries to her, but then continues to rob her and lie to her and con her and cheat her and use her. And she began crying and she says, "My son is just so broken." And I hugged her and gently replied, I hope he gets there. But right now he's not broken. He's just miserable. You see, you can be really, really sorry that you got caught, or absolutely miserable that you're having to live with the consequences of what you did, or you can just drop your pride, drop the denial, humble yourself, be gracious, genuinely remorseful, and ask the God of grace for help. And when you do that, that's when hope begins to rise. Peter was broken. He owned his stuff. There's another thing Peter does. It's kind of subtle, kind of in between the lines, but so healthy and so wise. He stayed in the group. He stayed in a group. When we find him in that fishing boat in John 21, he's not alone. It says that Thomas and Nathaniel and James and John, a couple other disciples were there with him. Peter says, "You know what, guys, I'm going fishing." And we do that, don't we? We return to whatever we knew best before we failed. And they say, "Hey, we're going with you." So the seven of them go out together that night, and they catch absolutely nothing. But at least they were together, just good friends in the same boat. In fact, right after Peter admitted his failure and wept bitterly about it, we find him right back in the group, hiding out in an upper room with the rest of the guys, because Jesus was right about them too. They all would shrink back. They all would fall away that night. And now Peter's back on the fishing team with these guys and knew that all of them were in the same boat, so to speak. And you know what? So are we. Didn't we just admit that all of us are in the same boat? I mean, the Bible tells us that all have sinned and fallen short of God's glorious standard. One of the reasons I love places like Mission so much is no perfect people allowed. When you begin to own your stuff with God, and then you begin to surround yourself with other humble people who know they need God's grace, they need God's help too. When you are vulnerable and open up to them and begin to share the journey together, man, there is healing. There's power in the group. Stay in the group. I will sometimes run into people I haven't seen in church in a while, go, "Man, where you been?" "Well, I don't know, man. I've been going through a really hard time." So, like, where you been? A lot of people begin to think, after what I've done, there is no way I can show my face around there again. No, you're wrong. We're all in the same boat. Stay in the group. "Well, I have no place in a worship service after the things I've thought and the things I've done." No, stay in the group, but I'm too embarrassed, but I'm too ashamed. No, stay in the group. There's healing in the group. Ecclesiastes 4:10 reminds us, if one person falls, the other can reach out and help. But people who are alone when they fall, man, they're in real trouble. Gang, we all fall down. Stay in the group. There is such a contrast between Judas and Peter. Both betrayed Jesus. But one isolated himself and let shame take him out. The other one stayed in the group, and grace restored him. Stay in the group. One more thing Peter does right. And anybody who wants to resurface and find hope, joy, forgiveness in real life must do as well. He dove in and swam toward Jesus. Here's the scene. So Peter's floating in this boat with his buddies. They're about 100 yards off the shore. It's around sunrise. And they can see this dimly lit figure on the shoreline building a breakfast fire. And this guy on the beach shouts out to them, "Hey, you guys caught any fish?" Not a great question to ask frustrated fishermen who haven't caught anything. And they go, "No." "Well, throw your net on the other side of the boat." And they got nothing to lose, so they do. And the nets get so full they begin to break. And John remembers the same thing happening 3 years prior when Jesus called them to follow him. And he yells out, "It's the Lord!" And before he even gets Lord out of his mouth, Peter jumps overboard and starts swimming toward Jesus. And in jumping out of that boat, I think he was saying, "Man, I have thought about this long enough. I'm tired of feeling like this. I'm cold, I'm hungry, I'm miserable in my self-perceived uselessness. I am ready to let go of my failures. I'm going to leave my past behind. And I'm just going to swim to Jesus." A few years ago, I got to stand in that very spot at the Sea of Galilee. I was overcome with emotion. So I took off my shoes and I waded out in the water a little bit, about ankle deep. And I'm standing there ankle deep in the water where Peter would have come out of that water. I'm looking at that rocky beach, and I can just imagine Peter standing there, just totally out of breath from frantically swimming, chest heaving, water dripping from his hair and his beard, standing there looking through the smoke of another charcoal fire, and this time locking eyes with forgiveness. Let me remind you whose eyes Peter was looking into. Peter is looking into the same eyes of a friend he had betrayed just a few days earlier. He's looking into the eyes of a man whose forehead still bore the puncture marks from wearing a crown of thorns. Peter was looking into the eyes of a man whose hands and feet still bore reminders of the spikes that held him to a Roman cross. Peter is looking into the eyes of the one who had died as a substitute for his sins and his failures. And on this beach, on this new day, through this new fire, he's looking into the hope-filled eyes of the resurrected Jesus. And as they lock eyes, Jesus asks him, Peter, you love me? And Peter responds, you know, Lord, you know I love you. You know how many times Jesus asked him that question? Yeah, 3 times. Same number of times he denied knowing Jesus around that other fire. And there's different Greek words in the Bible for the word love. So the first time Jesus says, Peter, do you love me? He uses the word agape, which is a godlike, sacrificial, unconditional type of love. Peter comes back with, you know I phileo you, which is the word for brotherly love. And you just got to love the humility of that. Here's Peter going, I ain't going to make that same boastful claim again. I'm not capable of that kind of love yet. But I will love you like a brother. I will love you with all I got, imperfect as I might be, but yes, you know, I love you, Lord. And Jesus says, well, if you love me, I want to use you to change this world. Peter, you might have flamed out and failed, but I died and I rose again so that those failures could be forgiven and forgotten. And Peter, you need to know, I still believe in you. And with those words, Peter, this guy who thought God wanted nothing to do with him, resurfaces. And he goes on to become one of the biggest difference makers who ever walked this planet. Mission is here today because of men and women like him. Check out this scripture. Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. In his great mercy, he has given us new birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead and into an inheritance that can never perish, spoil, or fade, kept in heaven for you. Did you catch who wrote that? An old fisherman who dove in and swam to Jesus, who looked into the eyes of forgiveness, into the eyes of the God of second chances, who looked into the eyes of hope. And a bunch of us have done that here, just like our friend Eddie. Check out Eddie's story.
My name is Eddie Lara, and this is my story. Growing up, I always felt as if a dark cloud was always hovering over me. My parents raised us in a Catholic church. As a family, they took us to church every Sunday. To others, we appeared to be a good family. However, once we would get home, it was instantly back to fighting. Home was chaotic, and here I was attending catechism. I would think to myself, if God is so good, then why doesn't he answer my prayers and help my parents love each other? I grew angry with God and the whole world because of it. Because of my bad relationship with my father and the constant drama at home. I constantly left home. I was running to drugs to forget all the negative things going on in my life, and that wasn't enough. I started drinking. I was constantly in trouble with my parents, school, and the law. I barely graduated with my high school diploma. Shortly after high school, I was arrested. It was my first felony charge because of embezzlement. And 2 weeks after being released from jail, I received my second felony. I remember when I was in court, the judge telling me, you're digging yourself in a very deep hole, very fast, kid. After serving my time in jail, I started working construction. This was my opportunity to start over. However, I started using drugs again and drinking heavily. This became my daily routine, my normal, and it went on for a few years. When I was 23, I met the love of my life. I was still using drugs, drinking, but I hoped she wouldn't leave my side. But she eventually grew tired of my behavior, and we would fight about it. One night in particular, I remember her giving me an ultimatum that it was either her or the drugs. I took it as an empty threat, and the very next night I went out with my buddy and started drinking and using like always. It was good. I was angry and it was numbing until I started seeing white and blurry. I felt like I was literally fading away. Don't remember much, but I remember hearing the panic in my buddy's voice and the worry on his face, and I almost died. I knew something had to change. A few months went by, and my best friend started going to church. He would pry and try to get me to go. I would say no and stop bugging me about it. He was relentless, so I finally caved and said yes. The day I showed up, there was a guest pastor, Gene Apple. He came up on stage and opened his teaching with, do you ever feel like life is giving you hit after hit after hit? And I instantly started bawling my eyes out. Felt as if my best friend had talked to the church and told them everything that was going on in my life. And for the first time, I started feeling something new. We continued to attend every week from that Sunday on, leading up to Easter of 2024. That day I came listening the message of Easter, that through a relationship with Jesus, there could be hope for my life. And I needed hope. My past, my present, my future, and surprisingly, I knew I believed it. I remember Pastor Mike saying that that they had extra clothes for everyone, for whoever would like to be baptized. As he's saying this, I'm thinking to myself, maybe I should get baptized. When I got to the tub, I was in tears. I was over that dark cloud just hovering above me my whole life. I wanted it gone. When I came out of the water, I felt like the weight was just off my shoulders. The dark cloud disappeared. I really can't believe my life now. It's unrecognizable. It's a miracle. If you were telling me a few years ago that I would have hope and happiness in my life and that I would be attending church and volunteering, I would say you're crazy. My name is Eddie Lara, and I believe Jesus is the Christ, and he brought me from death to life.
If the resurrection is true, anything's possible. And it's true. And anything is possible. And there's not just hope for everyone, like we say around here. God wanted you to know today there's hope for you. There's hope for you. That Jesus came and he died and he was buried and he rose again so that you can have real life. He came to die as a substitute for your sin so you can live forever. And today he's saying, come on, let's do life together. Come to me, follow me, believe in me, walk with me. I'll help you walk this life. Again, we're just telling you from experience, it's a brand new kind of life with the kind of help you've always needed to walk your life. And so today, maybe you can just pray a prayer saying, God, I'm coming home today. I want to be forgiven of my sins. I trust you. I want to do life with you. I want to drop that stupid backpack by the foot of the cross and just say, take it. I know I'm a sinner. I know I'm a failure. I need you to forgive them all. He'll do that. He wants to do that. God loves you so much. So you can express that today by being baptized into Christ. And some have already decided to do that today and are lining up to get ready to experience that. But maybe you didn't come prepared to do this today, but you know right now God's stirring in your heart. Say, I'm calling you, I'm talking to you, I'm one-on-one with you right now. And so if that's you, I just encourage you, like many people have done so far this week, and just get up from where you're at and go back to the back corner. If you're outside, come on in. If you're in the lobby, come on in. Go to the back corner, walk down the hallway, and people will meet you there and say, you know what? I'm ready to dive in and swim to Jesus too. Just say to somebody here, take my phone, man, take my glasses, take my watch. I didn't come prepared to do this, but I'm doing it. We got t-shirts, we got shorts, we got towels, we got all the stuff. And just come on today. Today is your day to begin a relationship with Jesus Christ. Some people think, well, I don't know about baptism, man. I got to wait till I'm good enough to do that. No. You'll never be there. That's a starting point where you say, okay, I'm just surrendering my life to you. I want to identify with the death, the burial, and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. I want to walk a new life. I know I'm not going to be perfect, but I know you're going to be walking with me, and I will walk with you. I will follow you, Jesus. If that's your desire today, come on down while we're worshiping and just jump in the tub. So let me pray, and then we're going to have to multitask. We're going to cheer for people. We're going to sing our hearts out, all of that, and we're going to move and get changed and all that. So, Father, I just thank you for moments like this where we get to declare that we are all in with your grace, that we need your grace. We need your power in our life. We need to be forgiven. We need to turn away from our old lifestyle and walk toward a new lifestyle, asking for your help along the way. Thank you that we can resurface from our sin and failure, that you fix broken things like us. So God, it's in our brokenness today. We come to you with deep gratitude in our heart, and we worship, and we're baptizing, all because of you. Thank you for this incredible story, that the resurrection is true, and because it is true, anything is possible. So thank you. I pray it all in Jesus' name. Amen.